Inductive Automation currently has authorized distributors in over 8 countries, including Australia, Brazil, Central America, France, Italy, Norway, South Africa, and Switzerland. One of our guests today, Element 8, is the official distributor for Sub-Saharan Africa and are based in Johannesburg, South Africa. Element 8 supports a variety of industries, including food and beverage, water, mining, and many more. They work directly with integration partners throughout the country and offer one-on-one training led by experts at their training facility. We're very excited to be working with them and to have them here with us today. Our speakers are Jaco Markwat, Francois Theron, and Deon Korb. Jaco is the team lead and founder of Element 8. Francois is the engineering manager at Clover, and Deon is responsible for the electrical and control systems development at Clover. Thank you all for being here today to share your experience with Ignition. I'll turn it over to you now to tell us a little bit more about yourselves and begin your presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that introduction, Annie, and thank you for the opportunity. I think this is our first participation in the ICL, and we're really excited to share some journeys and learnings with you today. And of course, welcome and thank you to everybody for joining us live. And of course to Francois and Deon. It really is fantastic to see you live in the office. I think for the last 18 months we've been doing online calls and smiling at each other from behind masks. So it's really good to have you in the office today. So today we're going to be discussing a couple of talking points. We're going to talk about all the stuff that we're passionate about: technology, strategy, enablement, and of course Ignition. But perhaps the best departure point, at least for context, is maybe to give our viewers a little bit of an introduction to Clover. Clover is a leading branded consumer goods and beverages group here in South Africa that does not only operate from South Africa, but other selected African countries, with a very rich history and humbling beginnings dating back to 1898, with a group of like-minded farmers came together in the eastern part of South Africa to form the first company back then, and really driven by a simple aim, which is bringing people together through the love of food, and very much a much loved brand and business in South Africa. And I don't know, you guys should be doing the introduction, but but welcome to Francois and Deon from Clover again, and thank you for your time. It's really good to have you here.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
So we're going to talk about a couple of things. So the title of the invitation reads about scalability and about flexibility and simplicity and mobility. It's all really ambitious words, I suppose, if you look at the overall what you guys set out to achieve. And maybe we can kick it off with you, Francois, and talk a little bit about, I don't know if you agree with the modern industrial automation platform. Maybe you were just looking for a skater when you started off, but essentially what is now a modern industrial automation platform. And maybe you can talk us through a little bit of what the genesis of this journey, where it all started, and maybe the why, what you were looking to achieve and how you started with this journey. That would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Jaco. Look, we were trucking along merrily with our technology portfolio a few years ago, but there was a bit of a gap in how we serviced the business need at that stage, and we felt that a bit of a revamp in our automation platform was necessary. So we started by redefining our technology strategy, right? And foremost, looking at how we will service the business needs. So as any good technology strategy starts, we ripped out some business goals that we are typically directly responsible for servicing.
And these are the strategic objectives that you
These are some of the strategic objectives that we aim to support through this drive. So growth through MPD, Clover, as you know, as you just mentioned, is a leading consumer goods company, and we keep innovating with new products, and that means rolling out new projects quite frequently. With that comes organic growth and product volume growth, and then obviously, as any FMCG company drives, is the cost and efficiency metric.
Yep.
Now, when we started this journey, we looked at it from a technology agnostic perspective, right? We just wanted to see which capabilities do we need in place, what systems do we need to support those capabilities, and what technology will actually enable us to build this structure.
And I like that because we were just speaking before we went live, we were talking about how typically with the approach, when we're looking at a transformation roadmap, the approach is very often predicated and limited to the existing technology you have and understanding what to do next, versus what you guys did was the exact opposite, to almost start with a blank page and understand what we need, regardless of what we have, what we need to get to that end state.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So this is basically what we came up with. I know it's a bit cryptic on on this slide.
I like the new no compromises. What is the no compromises mean?
Look, there's certain capabilities that we believe any modern industrial organization need to have, and for us it was important to drive towards that. But something like some of the blocks that are highlighted here, mobility was important for us.
Yes.
Right. Consolidated data management was a very big point for us, because we had little pockets of data everywhere.
Silos of information.
Silos of information, little Excel spreadsheets. And then especially a big drive for us was giving context to that data, which was sometimes a bit difficult within our existing structure, because we believe that those aspects would drive the efficiency and cost management perspectives specifically well. Then rapid development was also a big driver for us, especially since we were looking at A, big volume growth projects, and B, frequent NBD projects. It was very important for us to be able to roll something out.
You probably have to explain that three-letter acronym.
The NPD, new product development.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So we do spend a lot of time developing new products, trying to push into new market segments.
And that's fairly typical of any FMCG category management kind of business, is the ability to quickly introduce those categories and products to the market as quickly as you can.
Correct.
And change at the same time.
So not only from a technology perspective, but also from a process and a development and engineering perspective, we had to be very agile in order to provide that support.
Cool. And the areas at least that you were, I almost want to say, non-negotiable for you, Deon, I know this was where you led a lot of that initial investigation. So we're talking about capability, scalability, and simplicity. So when you kicked this off and you understood these three areas is what you were doing the criteria on, or the selection criteria on, were you looking for a SCADA at that point, or more of an industrial platform?
See, as the immediate need was a SCADA.
Yes.
And with all the other technical requirements that we'll get to later. Yeah, we looked at getting a SCADA, but then you start looking at different products and see, oh, this one's good at this one's good at that.
Yes.
You start realizing and you see and you recognize some future potential, of which there's a lot in the fact that we're here. Means obviously we're using ignition, and we'll speak of some of those identified capabilities later. And it definitely, well, it tipped the scales in ignition's balance. Yeah.
Good. Let's maybe talk through a couple of those. Do you want to start it off with the capability requirement?
Well, yes. Let's do that. When we decided to do this technology evaluation, we had already developed relatively mature and capable PLC standards. But most importantly, we had quite a number of them already running. And we can't go after a few years and say, oh, we've decided on a new SCADA HMI system, re-engineer, redevelop. So any solution that we decided on had to seamlessly integrate with what was already there. Obviously, just basic communication level.
Yes.
And just matching the architecture, the internal software architecture that we use. We run a Microsoft shop in Clover. Our IT is quite heavy on security. None of this. Our SCADA runs on a flavor of Windows Server 2000.
Yes.
Where you still have the log off, shut down, drop down, and don't touch it, because then our SCADA stops working.
Of course.
So
it's quite
we want,
as it should be. Yeah.
We've seen some places, been some places. So whatever we decided needs to run on the latest and greatest of Microsoft, with no extended testing of patches. Microsoft releases a security patch, you need to be able to install it the very next day. It was a requirement from the start. On a variety of client devices, traditionally we only had a desktop PC,
Yes.
but the world has changed.
In the traditional sense of a control room and a plant floor environment. Yeah.
We are actually moving away from the concept of control rooms.
Yep.
Because you need operators at the machines.
Yeah, you need them listening to the plant, and we also have some manual interventions. Some samples need to be taken. Not all plants are entirely automated, where you have to swing a bend around on a flow pan. Now expecting the operator to run a few hundred meters back to the control room, push a button to confirm that he changed it.
Yes.
It wastes time.
Absolutely.
It just doesn't work, and has an impact on morale. A robust architecture, when you start running a plant 24/7, you don't get a lot of opportunity for downtime.
No.
So just from unplanned maintenance, it needs to be robust, but we also required something where we can perform all of these security patches and regular maintenance without getting downtime. It just doesn't happen. We don't have, every Thursday the whole plant shuts down. So we needed a system that allows us to perform maintenance on the fly, if I put it that way. And operational security, it is built into just about every SCADA system that you get, and is a lot of times switched off because it's so cumbersome to configure and use. So we wanted something with a good blend of security and convenience, where it integrates into our Microsoft Active Directory, all our users have logons, but also not something where you have to type a password that long onto a touchscreen in the field and get Gorilla Arm in the process.
Yeah.
But we'll get to the solution to that problem.
Yeah.
In a while.
So it's just a question on the variety of client devices. So the view was the ability to run on any form of client device. There shouldn't be a consideration whether it's a specific OS only, or it should just be able to be extended to any kind of in-client device.
Exactly. And not necessarily a fixed resolution. A small barrier to entry, anything from a phone to very expensive fixed touch panel.
Yeah.
And later, maybe even a video wall. Who knows? We haven't done that yet.
Oh, you haven't?
No, we haven't.
That's the support.
It's on the roadmap.
You can show us the roadmap afterwards. Scalability, as I know, is something that we've spoken about at length. And maybe just to kick off some of the scalability ideas that we had spoken again before we went live, is if we think about I suppose the well-known elements as part of transformation, we think about people, process, and technology, right? There's also a fourth and often overlooked element, which is, I want to call it enterprise-wide. Because regardless of how ambitious or even pragmatic your transformation strategy is, you can't think of it only in the elements of people, process, and technology. It's got to be enterprise-wide as well. And that's where scalability plays such a big part, because you can very often go down a journey of transformation, and at some point, if it's not scalable, you realize that this will not actually become enterprise-wide, and that immediately puts a halt to any process or progress that you have made. So scalability, I can understand why it was an absolute one of your three selection criteria, which was a non-negotiable.
So you mentioned it, but the scalability, of course, you get the technical scalability,
yes,
whether it can do the job from our proof of concept all the way to enterprise-wide. But then you also have the economic scalability. One of our colleagues mentioned it the other day, that he says, we can't select a product and then suffer from the success because we simply cannot afford.
It's counterintuitive.
It is counterintuitive.
Yeah, let's make it successful.
So yes, you do a beautiful proof of concept, and you say, I want this everywhere. Oh no, wait, can't afford.
And at the same time, to add to that, you don't want to engineer around economic constraints, which often happens.
We did it in the past, yes. And you had an operator run up and down from the existing view client because that's where we had a license.
It is counterintuitive because everything you want that platform or that piece of software to be, it can't be too much because then it's going to become too expensive. So you want the use, you want the familiarity and the enablement of the usage, but not too much because then it becomes too expensive.
So obviously on the technical capability is the scalability of the tags and clients, because we were busy, and we're currently still busy with factory consolidation and massive expansion. And we develop these UDTs and standard templates, and then we have to instantiate, and it grows very, very quickly. So we wanted something that can just handle every time we have a project, the system must be capable of taking it on. So we we did the investigation and we were pretty happy. And then also scalability on the number of clients. In the past, our clients were very expensive based on the per seat license.
Per seat license.
So we also knew that as soon as you remove that barrier, we're not only going to have 10 clients. Just because we can, people are going to use the system, and the numbers are going to get out of hand. Will the system be able to handle it?
And you can also extend the interaction with the system to various other departments, people. You can configure the views. Maybe you've done that already.
Correct. So something that we've seen a lot now is departments like quality. The quality discipline, we normally would have to walk into the plant, ask an operator, how do I see this value? How do I get to that? They are starting to buy into this and using the system a lot more interactively, which gives them a complete different dimension on how they perform their duties.
We spoke a little bit about the scalable project implementation and the concurrent development. And maybe it feels like we're jumping ahead. This is just your criteria. This is not what you've actually done. But maybe,
so, as part of the factory expansion, we knew that we were going to have a lot of projects running concurrently.
Yes.
And in the past, we've had some issues with concurrent development licenses, because now one engineer is commissioning a project and he requires a development environment, and somebody else is doing the same thing. Now, who's going to get the IDE? The guy who's first or the guy who barks the loudest? It's a problem that we didn't want to have.
Also feels counterintuitive in terms of the kind of expansion that you want to create.
Exactly. So we wanted something when a number of anybody who needs to work on the system can do it at the same time.
I think we spoke about the tag licensing. That's probably self-explanatory.
It is, and we don't like tag licensing, because how many tags do you need for that project? I don't know. I haven't designed it yet. How many tags per control module?
But regardless of how many it could be, it should be able to just scale with it.
Exactly.
Correct. And especially the scalability of tag licenses, we found slightly awkward in the past, where a small project would bump into the next tier of licensing, and all of a sudden it's just an unbalanced licensing cost for the project.
Now you're doing a small project, but you run up against quite a large tier, which is very expensive. That license expansion is more than the cost of the project.
Yes.
So who needs to pay for that?
Yes.
So I think a simplification of the licensing model gives you that scalability. Correct. Makes 100% sense. Right, the third one was simplicity. So I know this simplicity is quite broad as well. I know we've got 3 points on here, but it could easily have been 10 points. Maybe you can expand with the points.
I think we kind of deliberately made it the 3 points, because those were the 3 levels that I want to point out.
Simplicity.
Well, yes. Simplicity even in our PowerPoint slide. So first and foremost, the simplicity was for the actual operators.
Yes.
Because they are the people who touch and interact with the system all the time. It needs to be very easy for them, rapid identification of faults, very quickly see if the plant's in a good state or not. And with the standardization also comes a simplicity, because we design every plant and unit to look the same. When you walk past it, you know what good looks like. There's no yellow, here's a good thing, pink there's okay. If you see green there, it's actually a problem. It's a similar design philosophy and also navigation of it. You know exactly how to navigate it. So you have a skills transfer. So keep it as simple as possible to start with, but when a person understands how the system works, that is applicable to everywhere. You can use your operators in different areas of plant. So that was firstly the priority. A second simplicity point was for those who actually have to roll out our system. Now, we cannot have a set of corporate standards which are so cumbersome that our integrators pad quotes because they know it's going to take them ages to implement it to our standards.
Yeah.
So whatever building blocks we do, we also develop tools for how to rapidly instantiate them. No, simple example, you don't want a guy to go and instantiate every valve by hand. No, just give him a spreadsheet, quick 5-second import, and it's all done. No redeveloping of graphics.
Yeah.
Drag it onto the screen. It works. All functionality comes with it. That to us was another simplicity point of view. The least important one of the lot was probably the development engineering, and that's the function that we in our team do.
Yeah.
So Take the example of modern smartphones.
Yes.
They're very simple to use for the operators, which are us. But I don't for a second believe it's simple inside. Those engineers and programmers put a lot of work in it. And so that's what we said. It would be nice if it's easy for us as the development engineering team, but that's not a priority. We had some pleasant surprises as well, and we also did a few funny things, which we are now fixing. Back to your technical debt.
Cool. Maybe one thing to talk about is, so you, as part of this consideration around simplicity, specifically the points around development engineering and the rollout, what has been developed. So you kick this off with an internal view. So a lot of the typical traditional kind of development and views and approaches that a system integrator would typically do, or you would do with a system integrator, you did internally. Any specific reasons why that approach was followed, and what?
I think it was maybe somewhat serendipitous. We were at a stage where we were preparing for this big consolidation project that Deon mentioned earlier. And in addition to that, there's a very strong team behind us, right? So in my team is Deon with two other very, very sharp development engineers. Deon comes from an SI background as well, so he's been around the block a few times. He's seen what good looks like a few times, and what bad looks like.
Absolutely.
So we had this opportunity where we had a very strong team with time availability to throw at this.
Very familiar and very close with your own systems and reads.
Correct. Yeah, familiar with our products, our processes, our environment, which was very fortuitous.
Cool, perfect, that makes sense. So we've spoken about the three non-negotiable selection criteria. Then we reach the common challenges. And Francois, I'm very excited that you only have three common challenges. I would have expected the list to be a little bit long. And on the so that's, first of all, that's excellent that you only come up with three common challenges, but you have cost, and I almost want to say naturally you have cost, and that's typically one of the early, if not number one, sort of challenges or considerations. Then the complexity and the resource requirements. So I've made a comment here that I wanted to ask you specifically around the you alluded to it earlier, the technical debt. So the notion or the idea of technical debt, which by nature is the amount of code and work that you need to put into making something viable, and what that will cost you in the long run, because after all, you buy a dog, not a puppy. At that point, was technical debt and how that will affect project debt, was that a consideration at all when you thought about complexity and resource requirements back then?
It was definitely. I think Deon's analogy holds true here as well around your smartphone, right? And even not even necessarily in the operator interface, but let's take the example of user configuration, right? And we almost wanted to get our platform to a point where system integrators had to configure and not engineer. As I mentioned, we had the good fortune of putting a lot of our own engineering effort in up front to make up a bit of that technical debt.
Yeah. I think Arlen, sorry to interrupt you, I think Arlen from CirrusLink often refers to it as leveraging tools on platforms and not coding on operating systems.
100%. So we were in a position to create that platform. And to create a naughty guide to go along with that platform. to make it as easy as possible to implement and to roll out.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, that's fair to whichever integration partner you're working with, and I know you're working with several.
Yes.
It does make their job easier, and in a sense, all the hard work you've done in front, it does make it easier for them, and it does enable a little bit faster rollout of various phases of projects as well.
And that directly relates back to the cost of our project.
Absolutely. So these are the common challenges, Francois, and that was it?
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, together with the resource requirements as well. I mean, we spoke about the human aspect of resource requirements, but it's deeper than that, because it's also platform resource requirements, or specifically in the IT space.
Yes.
where there were certain constraints that Deon also alluded to earlier around system updates, and not necessarily only application updates, but updating the platform, staying live there, not being overly expensive in terms of resource requirements from the start. That forms part of that resource requirement.
Yep.